Crawford here, psychologist, speaker, author of 8 books, host of 2 PBS specials. Here again to bring you another tip on how to help you create the life you want. Specifically, how to use my life from the top of the mind philosophy to bring more clarity, confidence, creativity into everything you do. Today I want to look at how we can influence more aspects of our life, kind of controlling what we can. I know we live in interesting times today, but there's a whole lot of things that are outside of our control. And for those of you who follow my life from the top of the mind philosophy, you know that when we try to control things we can't control, the limbic system, the brain interprets that as, uh-oh, danger, and actually throws us into that fight or flight mode. I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I want to expand that today to a little bit more of the mind-body connection and bring in what's called the vagus nerve. If you haven't heard about the vagus nerve, you will. It's really a wonderful new discovery that really speaks to how the mind is connected to the body is connected to the mind, and the more we understand the connection and the more we can influence this process, the more influence we have over our life and the lives of others. So basically, again, for those of you who follow my life from the top of the mind philosophy, you know, we've got these 3 parts to the brain. Lower part of the brain is called the brainstem. This is where our fight or flight responses are located. It's the part of the brain that regulates our muscle tension, heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, etc. Upper 80% of the brain, I call it the top of the mind. This is the neocortex. This is where we make purposeful decisions. This is where we have access, our clarity, confidence, creativity, compassion, joy, etc. Middle part of the brain is called the limbic system. This is the scanner, processor, router part of the brain. Its mission on the planet is to keep us safe and alive as a species, so it has a tendency to scan the environment, paying a little bit more attention, actually a lot more attention, to negative data than it does positive data. Plus, it's not very smart, and it's working with old software. So it has a tendency to interpret a lot of negative data as dangerous and throws us into the part of the brain that's designed to deal with danger. Now, when we're in a dangerous situation and we need to react without thinking in order to be safe, that's exactly what we want to happen. But notice how many situations today really aren't immediately dangerous in the sense that we need to react without thinking. Matter of fact, what we need is access to our best interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, clarity, confidence, creativity, etc. Plus, what we also want to do is regulate the 2 systems in our body. We've got the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is the one that engages that fight or flight response. The parasympathetic nervous system brings us back to normal. And when those are working in balance, you know, we might get triggered and we come back to normal. Hey, it's really not a problem. It's kind of how it's supposed to work. However, when we get triggered and stay triggered, or get triggered again and again and again and again, triggering adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, raising our blood pressure, our heart rate, our muscle tension, and we kind of live in this hyper-stressed, tense kind of state of mind, state of being, that's not good for the body. It really screws with our heart rate, it screws with our digestive system, it minimizes our immune system. It kind of, unfortunately, makes us more susceptible, more vulnerable to illness and disease. So what we want to do is influence this process. Now, again, part of this has to do with knowing what we want to change, knowing what we can change, and knowing what we can't. There's a concept in my book, by the way. The book is Life from the Top of the Mind. This is where I go into how to do all of this, and this is what I get to go around the world teaching, is this system on how to influence the mind and the body. So one of the things in the book talks about what I call the wisdom of serenity. It comes from the serenity prayer that says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's become a very popular prayer. You can now get that prayer on a refrigerator magnet, which means it must be true if you can get what you believe on a refrigerator magnet. But sometimes I think we misunderstand the whole concept here, because it's almost like a plea for serenity. But notice how it says, God grant me the serenity to first accept the things we cannot change. We need to have awareness and acceptance of those things we cannot change. There's something I talk about in my book and my seminars that says, whenever you make the most important thing in your life something that is beyond your control, that is a recipe for stress, frustration, anxiety, because the middle brain interprets that as danger and throws us into that lower brain, triggering that parasympathetic nervous response. So what we want to do is to recognize, okay, we want to be able to accept those things we can't change. You know, the economy, COVID-19, difficult people, traffic. You know, there's a lot of things in life that we want to practice acceptance so that we don't get caught up in trying to change the things we can't. Then having the courage to change the things we can, rather than blaming everything and everyone around us for how we're thinking and feeling. Let's make sure we own that. And that takes courage to own that and take responsibility for that, to have the ability to respond. Knowing how it all works helps, though, and that's where the wisdom to know the difference and the wisdom to make a difference comes in. When we can recognize what's going on, this middle brain is interpreting some situation as dangerous, throwing us into the brainstem. The brainstem triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, which is part of the vagus nerve, going from the body down to the brain down to the body. And it kind of puts us in that fight or flight mode. The heart beats faster, the blood pressure goes up, the shortness of breath, muscle tension. That's all our body reacting based on the vagus nerve triggering the sympathetic nervous system. Now, when it's working fine, the vagus nerve then triggers the parasympathetic nervous system and we kind of calm back down. When it's not working fine, we stay triggered in that sympathetic nervous system, and that's the problem. Here's the cool thing. We can begin to reprogram this middle brain to interpret data, especially negative data, in such a way that sends it up to the upper 80% of the brain, the top of the mind, the neocortex, where we can then kind of trigger the vagus nerve to actually breathe deeply, to kind of step back, to kind of let those muscles relax for a little bit. This is, by the way, why mindfulness and exercise and yoga and deep breathing and meditation, why it all works. Tons of science out there, and it has to do with how the brain is triggering the vagus nerve to actually calm the body down. So when the brain tells the lungs to inhale deeply and slowly, and kind of counts while we're doing it, the lungs send the message to the brain to relax. See, when we're in a fight or flight situation, breathing deeply and saying the word relax is not something we want to do. But when we're doing it purposefully, what we're doing is we're engaging the vagus nerve to kind of have our body produce the parasympathetic nervous response that puts us back in that responsive, normal, purposeful state of being, state of mind. So if you want to have more influence over that, then the question is, how do we do that? This is what I get to do. I get to go around the world teaching people a model that actually spells brain, that is designed to show us how to shift from this lower brain up into the upper 80% of the brain, change the chemical makeup of our body from adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol to serotonin and endorphins, chemicals that help us feel better, think clear, oxytocin, all of that. So what we want to do is influence the kind of qualities and characteristics and chemicals we are triggering in our body. And when we're able to connect the mind and the body through the vagus nerve in this very purposeful way, that gives us a lot of influence over how we're thinking and how we're feeling and how our heart is working and how our immune system is working. It begins to kind of normalize this natural body experience that actually keeps us healthy. So what we don't want to do is trust this middle brain to decide whether we're triggering the vagus nerve in a fight or flight situation. We want to have the upper 80% of the brain, the top of the mind, deciding and purposefully triggering the vagus nerve to trigger the kind of responses of deep breathing and calming down and becoming more purposeful that allow us to be more influential. If this is something you would like for your organization, your family, your school, and you want me to come and do that, or we can do it virtually in these kind of crazy times, hey, all you got to do is go to my website, billcrawfordphd.com, or just Google Bill Crawford, Ph.D. I'll come up on the first page. Hit the contact button. Let me know what you're interested in, and I'd love to talk with you about that. What I do each week is I post one of these videos, so feel free to subscribe on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook or Pinterest or YouTube, or what I said, Twitter, iTunes, all of the social media. Also, if you would like to receive one of my favorite quotes each week, along with the 2 or 3 paragraphs about how to apply that quote to life, that uses the life from the top of the mind system to really talk a lot about how we can have more influence in our life and the lives of others, just go to the website, hit the subscribe button, it's free, put your name and email address in, and each week I will send you one of my favorite quotes along with 2 or 3 paragraphs about how to apply that quote to life, along with a link to a new video. My goal is to bring you new information, how you can become more influential in your life and the lives of others by understanding the science, specifically the neuroscience behind how we think and feel, and giving you more information so that you can influence that for yourself and those you love. If this is helpful, feel free to like the video. You know how folks love it when you like it. Share it with your friends if you feel it's valuable. And in the meantime, between now and the next time, here's to you. bringing more clarity, confidence, creativity into everything you do. And I look forward to seeing you in the future.